My parents humiliated me in front of everyone. Then tried to fix it with a gift. I walked out and left the catering invoice on the table. A month later, they showed up smiling with a gift bag, like nothing ever happened. But I wasn't the same person anymore. Want to know what happened the last time I opened that door? Watch till the end. My own family ended up embarrassing me at my brother's engagement party. This is childish, Mom muttered under her breath. I didn't say a word back. After that, I pulled the plug on the vendors and took back the check. I had driven 7 long hours just to be there for my brother's big celebration. But when I arrived, my seat was already taken, by the dog sitter of all people, hired by his fiancée. Then Mom mumbled, "You don't have to stay." So I walked back to my car, opened my banking app, and reversed the deposit I had made for the event. At exactly 9:04 p.m., my dad sent me a text that read, "Why did the venue kick us out?" That message hit a nerve. Right then, all I could think about was how selfish they were. And worse than that was the humiliation. The moment I realized everyone nearby had heard what she said, my face lit up with heat. They didn't even bother to pretend like they hadn't overheard. "You don't need to be here." That wasn't an invitation, it was a dismissal. And it stung more than she probably meant it to. Because it wasn't just about this party. It was every time I'd been pushed aside for Leo, or to protect Dad's pride, or to fit Mom's twisted ideas of appearances. I had pushed through 7 hours of driving, heat, road work, and traffic jams, just to see my brother. I didn't really have the time. And I sure as hell didn't have the money. Still, I handed over $3,000 like the rest of the family, not asking a single question. I figured that's just what you do when family's involved. I even wrote a short note along with the payment. "Happy for you, bro. Let's celebrate." That's what I wrote. I had to park 2 blocks away since the driveway and street were jammed with luxury rentals and flashy license plates. Leo always did love making a scene. The moment I walked inside, I could feel it, something was off. There wasn't any warmth in the air. No real happiness either. It felt staged, like one of those overproduced reality shows. People looked at me, but no one said a word. I started looking around for place cards with family names on them. I walked the area once, then again. No Kenny. No extra seat either. Couldn't find my name anywhere, so I asked someone where the servers were. A polite young guy let me know all the seats had already been taken. I pointed toward the open chair near Dad. It was supposed to be mine. He hesitated, then said, "Oh, that's for Chloe's dog sitter." I just looked at him in disbelief. This wasn't some kind of mistake. It was intentional. Then Mom walked up to me. She didn't ask how the drive was. No hug, no smile, nothing. She dropped it on me like it was just casual conversation. "You don't need to be here." I was standing just a few steps away from the patio, and I noticed people watching. One lady by the appetizer table quickly looked away. Someone else even chuckled. That's when it clicked, they had made me the outsider. The from out of town relative who didn't match the image they were selling. The brother who just didn't fit in with the glitzy aesthetic. So I turned around and walked back to my car. Didn't say a word. Sat behind the wheel and stared at the dash for a full minute. Then I opened up my phone, went into the banking app, and checked the transaction. I had paid $3,000 for this. For this circus. I hit cancel. I knew it'd take a few days to process, but that was fine. I just needed to start the process. Right at 9:04 p.m., Dad texted me. "Why are we being asked to leave?" Not a single word about me. Not, "Where are you?" or, "Are you okay?" Not even a half-decent question. Just a cold demand. Like I had broken something. I stared at that text, and something inside me just flipped. It wasn't anger. Not yet anyway. It was something colder. Sharper. I hadn't felt that clear-headed in a long time. That's when it hit me. I'd been the one paying for their illusion. Their clean, glossy version of life. And I was the only one still thinking I had to earn a place in it. I didn't text back. I turned on Do Not Disturb. Backed out of the driveway, and drove off into the night. I didn't know where I was headed, but I knew I wasn't done. They always saw me as the quiet one. The one who took the punches and kept going. They were about to find out that guy was gone. I didn't even go far. I parked in a quiet, dark corner of a Target parking lot a few miles out. Turned off the engine. Cracked the windows. It was still enough to let me think. And I needed that. But deep down, I already knew what I was gonna do. I opened the invoice Mom had sent me 2 months earlier. It had all the details. Catering, furniture rentals, flowers, even a 6-piece string quartet. The total? $26,400, split between 9 people. They'd done the math to the last cent. My part was $2,933. 33, but I rounded it up to $3,000 when I sent it in. I started scrolling through the message thread. That's when I noticed something weird. My name was still listed on the vendor documents. They had used my billing details to book the dessert company, the flower vendor, and even some champagne service I didn't remember agreeing to. So that gift I gave them wasn't just a contribution. It was a formal deposit. In my name. With my card. I called the dessert place first. Told them I needed to pause the payment due to a family issue. They were cool about it. Said they'd hold off unless I gave the green light. Next, I contacted the florist. Same deal. It helped that I still had receipts and had talked to them directly once or twice. I spent the next couple hours firing off cancellation emails. Nothing over the top. Just enough to throw a wrench in the gears, slow things down, at a few costs, maybe stop some refunds. I wasn't trying to ruin the whole event. Not yet. I just wanted them to feel a crack form in their perfect little night. A little pressure on their polished world. By 11 p.m., I had it all set in motion. Then I drove across town to crash at my buddy Tyler's place. He had a guest house out back and always kept a spot open. He didn't ask for details. Just tossed me a blanket, pointed to the couch, and handed me a cold beer. Before I even lay down, I flipped my phone to Do Not Disturb. Next morning, I woke up to chaos. 21 missed calls. Texts from Dad, Mom, my aunt, Leo, even Chloe. And the tone? It got ugly quick. I ignored every single one. Around 10 a.m., Tyler and I were sipping coffee out back when a black SUV rolled into the driveway. It was my parents. They didn't knock. Didn't hesitate. They came charging through the back gate like they owned the place. Mom looked like she was about to explode. Dad held up his phone like it was some kind of legal document. "You've embarrassed us," he said. "No," I told him, keeping my voice steady. "You embarrass me. I just returned the favor." Right away, they started in, accusations, guilt-tripping, the whole drama kit. How dare I ruin Leo's big night? How childish I was to storm out. I let them go on. I didn't interrupt a word of it. And when they finally paused, I said one thing. "You owe me $8,800. My dad blinked like he hadn't heard me right. "You heard me," I repeated. "I put down $3,000 under my name." I told them I had frozen payments to the vendors tied to that deposit. They could either reimburse me for the losses, or deal with the vendors themselves, because they were the ones who benefited from services I paid for. A few minutes later, Chloe showed up. She looked like she hadn't slept a wink, still dressed in last night's party clothes. She tried to jump into the conversation, but I didn't even look her way. Tyler stood nearby on the steps, clearly unsure what to do, but I caught a flicker of amusement in his eyes. There was no way to twist this one. No clever spin they could throw on it. For once, I had the upper hand. I told them I was done being treated like some afterthought at my own family's event. "If you want a perfect party," I said, "then pay for it." I let them know I'd be staying in town 2 more nights. If they wanted to yell, beg, or pitch another fit, they could do it after I was gone. But they didn't leave right away. Dad crossed his arms like I was a contractor that walked off a job halfway through. Mom paced tight circles next to Tyler's grill, acting like she owned the yard, completely ignoring the fact that this wasn't her home. She started muttering to no one in particular. "You're making a scene. This is ridiculous. Leo's night was ruined." As if talking fast and loud would somehow make her look better. "You've embarrassed us," Dad said again, like repeating it would make it true. "No," I said calmly. "You embarrass me. You just didn't expect me to push back." And they hated that. What I hated was the fact that I couldn't even yell or cry or plead with them to listen to my side. I was too calm. And that's when they realized they weren't going to regain control this time. Chloe was still wearing the same dress from last night, with a hoodie thrown over it like she was trying to fade into the background. She tried the gentle route, saying the whole thing had been blown out of proportion. I asked her straight up. "You gave my seat to your dog sitter?" She didn't answer right away. Just stared at the ground. "I didn't know," she finally said. "There just wasn't room for you. So the dog sitter ranked higher?" I asked. Silence again. Tyler stayed by the back steps, leaning against the railing like he was miles away. He didn't jump in, and I appreciated that. Mom cut back in, her voice tight and forced. "This isn't how families treat each other." I let out a single laugh, not because it was funny, but because it sounded like something straight out of a game show. Like, "Welcome back to Gaslight Me More." I looked at her. "Family doesn't tell their own son he doesn't have to be there," I said. "Family doesn't let a stranger take his place at the table. Family doesn't call after the fact pretending to be shocked when he walks out. Then I gave them the number again. You owe me $8,800. They just stared. I broke it down for them, everything. The vendors. The deposits. The contracts. My name, my billing info, my credit card. I didn't yell. Didn't beg. I spoke like someone who had finally decided he was done dumbing himself down just to keep the peace. Of course, they tried to argue. Dad asked if I was seriously going to bill my own family. I'm not billing anyone, I said. I'm collecting. I paid for stuff you used. You all want to act like adults, plan fancy events, and make decisions without me? Then act like adults and pay your share. Chloe tried to chime in again, but I cut her off. I'm not discussing anything with someone who thought I wasn't even worth a seat. You had your moment. Now this is mine. Eventually, they ran out of things to say. Mom called me cold. Dad called me ungrateful. Chloe didn't say another word. And Leo never even showed his face. That part spoke volumes. They left, not because they agreed with anything I said, but because they had no power left to twist the story. They had walked into the one place where they couldn't control the narrative, and that scared the hell out of them. The rest of that day, I stayed quiet. Tyler and I grilled burgers, watched a movie on the projector, and barely even talked about what had happened. But before I went to bed, I flipped my phone off. Do not disturb. Just to see what I'd missed. There was a message from Leo. I didn't know about the seat. I didn't mean for that to happen. No apology. No accountability. Just damage control. I turned off my phone and tossed it back on the table. If they wanted to treat me like the outsider, they could deal with this new version of me. The next morning, they came back. This time, they brought reinforcements. Leo was with them. So was Chloe. They were all standing there in Tyler's gravel driveway at 8:47 a.m., looking like they were about to stage an intervention. But this time, I wasn't answering the door alone. They banged on the screen door 3 times, hard and fast, like cops doing a raid. Tyler stood behind me, barefoot and holding a coffee mug, looking at me like, "Are you sure about this?" But I was already walking toward the door. Leo was in front. Behind him were my parents and Chloe, all looking rumpled, like they hadn't slept. I figured maybe they'd gotten up early for a little strategy meeting to try and do PR damage control. Leo was the first to speak. "Can we come in?" he asked. I stepped aside. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of calling me dramatic for saying no. Tyler grabbed his keys and ducked out the back. He didn't want front row seats to a family meltdown. We all stood there in the middle of the living room. No chairs, no coffee, just 4 people staring at me like they couldn't believe I hadn't already apologized. Leo started talking about misunderstandings, how he never saw the seating chart, how it was all up to Chloe's planner, how the whole thing just spiraled. I cut him off. "You had 6 weeks to double-check the guest list," I said. "You approved the table placements. You walked right past me last night, and didn't say a single word." Leo looked down. For a second, I thought he might actually admit it. But then Chloe jumped in. "This was never about some chair." "No," he said quietly. "It's about how all of you look at me like I don't belong. Like I'm the outsider. Like I'm just the guy who foots the bill, shows up, stays quiet, and still somehow ends up treated like he's the family screw-up." My mom stood there with her arms crossed. My dad didn't move, just stood stiff like a statue, jaw clenched. "Don't act like this is some surprise," I said. "When I lost my job, none of you even called. And that one Thanksgiving I missed 2 years back? You told everyone I was dealing with something. Then I finally drive 7 hours to make it here, and you give my seat at the table to the guy who walks your dog?" Leo mumbled something about not wanting to cause a scene. I looked right at him. "You didn't want drama?" I asked. "You threw a party that cost 26 grand. You hired someone to play Post Malone on the violin. You had your initials carved into a damn ice block. But me sitting at the family table? That was the real image breaker?" Chloe leaned in to whisper something to Mom. She didn't respond, just kept staring at me like I was some bug she didn't want to touch. "You want to talk about making a scene?" I snapped. "Let's talk about how you embarrassed me in front of a bunch of strangers. You didn't just leave me out, you made sure the whole room saw it. You told me, in front of guests, that I didn't even need to be there." That's when my dad finally opened his mouth. "This is Leo's big day," he said. "You're making everything about you." I laughed. "Yeah? It became about me the second I pulled the plug on my deposit. I'm not footing the bill for a party I wasn't even invited to properly." He looked like he wanted to say something else, but I wasn't done. "You owe me $8,800. I don't care how you divide it. I'm not tracking down vendors, I'm not covering any extra charges. and I'm sure as hell not disappearing just to make things easier for you. Then Mom, arms still crossed, asked if I was doing this just to be spiteful. No, I said plainly. I'm doing it because, for once in my life, I finally realize I don't owe you anything. Silence followed. The whole room went quiet. They came here thinking they could talk their way through this. Maybe even expected me to lose it, break down. But I wasn't breaking down. I was done. They all left not long after that. Leo muttered something about handling it. Dad just turned and walked away without another word. Mom wouldn't even look at me. Chloe was the last to leave. She didn't even bother closing the gate behind her. That night, I started packing up. I figured I'd stay one more night, and then leave the next morning. No goodbyes. No calls. Let them sit with it. The plan was to get out early. No big scene, no dramatic note, just gone. Tyler offered to drive me part of the way. Said he had errands to run in the next town over. I was folding clothes into my duffel when my phone lit up. Email. Subject line. Final payment notice, Aurora Catering. I figured it was just another vendor follow-up I'd already delayed. But this one? I hadn't seen it before. Late-stage invoice. Somehow slipped past me. It was due that day. Under my name. Total? $3,600. I read it twice. Then called. Turns out, my dad had listed me as the main point of contact on the catering contract. Never told me. They'd already charged my card for the deposit weeks ago. Now the rest was due, and if I didn't cancel by 5 p.m., they'd charge the full amount. I sat there with the phone in my lap, blinking at nothing. It wasn't just thoughtless anymore. It was planned. They hadn't just taken advantage of me. They were counting on me to shut up and pay for it like usual. That's when I made up my mind to go back. Not to scream, not to ask for anything, just to make sure there was no confusion about how this was going to end. Tyler didn't ask questions. Just handed me the keys to his spare car and said, "Go finish it." I didn't head to the venue. I went straight to Leo and Chloe's place on the other side of town. The lights were on. Chloe's car was in the driveway. I knocked once. Chloe answered, looking stunned. "I'm not here to fight," I said. "Just wanted to let you know, I found the invoice. Catering. Under my name. Charged to my card. Another $3,600. She blinked a few times and then stepped back, letting me inside. Leo was slouched on the couch, looking like he hadn't slept. Maybe the reality of it all had finally sunk in. "You're treating me like I'm your personal bank," I told them. "And then you turn around and act like I'm the selfish one." Leo didn't argue. Chloe tried to say she didn't realize I was still listed as the contact. I cut her off. "No more excuses. I'm canceling the payment. And if they charge me anyway, I'm sending you the bill. I'll take it to court if I have to." Leo looked up slowly. "You'd really go that far?" I nodded. "You've left me no other choice." Then, something unexpected happened. Chloe got up, walked into the kitchen, and came back with an envelope. Didn't say a word, just handed it to me. Inside was a check. $3,000. "For the deposit," she said. "The one you already paid." I stared at it, wondering if she felt guilty or just wanted to avoid a legal mess. Either way, I didn't care. I took the check. "That still leaves $5,800. I said. Nobody replied. I walked out. Back at Tyler's, I laid the check on the table and sat there in silence for a long time. That was it. The final break. Something too deep to patch up now. This wasn't a misunderstanding or one bad evening, it was full-on, intentional exploitation. They figured I'd just take it. They had no idea how loud I could be when I finally decided to speak up. The next morning, I left before the sun came up. The air outside was heavy and still. Tyler handed me a thermos of hot coffee and gave me a small nod. None of us were the type to drag things out with emotional goodbyes. I took one last look at his quiet little property before turning onto the gravel road and heading out, no words needed. I'd only been there 3 days, but it felt like I'd aged a year. About 20 minutes after clearing the city limits, my phone started buzzing again. At first, I ignored the calls. But then the texts started pouring in. I peeked at one while stopped at a light. From Dad, "We need to talk." From Mom, "Come by the house. Don't leave things like this." Even Leo tried again, "Let's talk." Just us. They all sounded different now. Less sure of themselves. Less smug. But I wasn't sure I'd ever go back to being the quiet one. I didn't say anything at first. But I couldn't shake the feeling, I had to know. So I turned the car around. When I pulled up at my parents' house, I found them all waiting in the living room. Leo was already there, pacing back and forth. My mom was perched stiffly on the armrest of the couch. My dad stood by the fireplace, arms crossed just like before. Chloe wasn't there this time. I stayed standing, didn't bother sitting down. My dad kicked things off with his usual line. "You've made your point." Then he started rambling about how things couldn't go on like this, like I was the one stirring up trouble. I cut right to it. "So, are you going to pay the $5,800? He didn't answer right away. My mom glanced over at him, waiting. Nothing. Eventually, he muttered, "I'll give you $3,000. That's fair." I let out a laugh, just once. Not because it was funny, more like I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Fair? You're offering me fairness now?" He stepped toward me, and my mom stood up like she might jump in, but I held my hand up to stop her. "No. You don't get to bargain. Not after all this. Not after humiliating me in front of a bunch of strangers. Not after saying I didn't need to be there." My voice was calm. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't angry. I was just done. I pulled the catering invoice from my back pocket and set it down on the coffee table. "This belongs to you now. I already spoke with the company. They expect payment today. You can call them, or let them come knocking. Doesn't matter to me." Leo tried to jump in, but I cut him off too. "I've got nothing else to say to any of you." And I meant it. Nobody stopped me as I walked out. No one shouted. Nobody cried. There weren't any dramatic goodbyes. Just silence. That kind that feels empty instead of peaceful. When I got back on the highway, I put my phone on silent and tossed it into the glove compartment. By the time I got home that night, I finally felt like I could breathe again. Not because everything was solved, but because I wasn't letting them drag me under anymore. No more group messages. No phone calls. Nothing. And for once, that was exactly what I needed. Just 3 days. That's all it took for the curtain to lift and show me what I'd been ignoring for years. No more favors. No more deposits. No more biting my tongue. Just peace. And I wasn't about to give that up for anybody. Update: a whole month went by. Quiet. No missed calls. No texts. Not even a word passed through the grapevine. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe. I started sleeping better. I didn't flinch every time my phone buzzed. I started to wonder, had they finally gotten the message? Then Sunday afternoon rolled around. There was a knock at my door. I checked the peephole, and my stomach dropped. My parents. Leo. Chloe. Standing there on my porch like it was Thanksgiving and they were dropping off a pie. I opened the door halfway. "What are you doing here?" "We figured enough time had passed," my mom said, like a few weeks could wipe away what they'd done. Leo looked hopeful. Chloe had a pastel-colored gift bag in her hands, like she thought it could smooth things over. Nobody was smiling. They just looked eager. I let them in. Honestly, I wanted to see what they expected would happen. Didn't take long, 5 minutes, maybe, and I knew nothing had changed. My dad brought up the catering invoice, said he knew someone who might knock the price down. Mom started talking about future family vacations. Chloe asked if I'd picked a wedding RSVP deadline yet. Not one word about what they'd done. No apology. Not even a hint. It was like watching someone try to rewind a fire. I stood up and opened the door again. "You need to leave." Mom gave me that look like I was the one being unreasonable. Leo just looked confused. "You think a month's gone by and I've just forgotten?" I said. "You didn't come here to make things right. You came to ease your own guilt." Chloe held out the gift bag. I didn't take it. "I'm not coming to the wedding," I told them. "I won't be there for the holidays either. I'm done." They just stood there, like they couldn't believe I meant it. "I gave you all the chances in the world," I said. "And every time, you showed me exactly who you are." They left slowly, glancing back like maybe I'd stop them. I didn't. That gift bag sat on the table for an hour. I never opened it. Just tossed it straight in the trash. And that was the last time I opened the door for them.